If I now look back at her and somebody asks me, what do you think is the most defining characteristic of your mother? I would say her fierce independence in thought, in action, in her ideas. I think that was what was remarkable about her. How did she see herself in a male-dominated society? I remember some of my girlfriends in college once asked her that, Mashima, do you believe in women's lib? This was the early 80s, and we were all, talking about women's rights and how they've been dominated in society. And my mother said something very interesting. She said, I have never thought of marching on the streets to claim my freedom. I have always been free. No one has ever been able to stop me from deciding what to do. And finally, when I executed it, even if there was opposition, and there was opposition, she told me of opposition from her own family when she entered cinema, when her first marriage to Sri Prabhat Mukhopadhyay broke down and she left him. There was a tremendous amount of opposition that she faced. But two things here. One, she was never daunted by it. She took it in that right spirit. It's not that she turned her back to her family or whoever did not approve of her actions. She was fine with them. But on the other hand, she never spoke about them too much. This was after my coaxing, when I would say, but are you sure that nobody had a problem with you leaving your husband or, acting in films? And she would tell me little incidents that would have happened. But she was never bitter. She was always very, very positive. She understood that people had their own compunctions, and therefore she had to do what she had to do, and nobody could stop her.
ওনার যে পার্সোনালিটি ছিল সেটাকে বলে স্ক্রিন পার্সোনালিটি। এই স্ক্রিন পার্সোনালিটিটা সকলের থাকে না, কারুর থাকে, কারুর থাকে না। তো ওনার মধ্যে যেটা দেখেছিলাম, সুন্দরী তো বটেই, কিন্তু সেই সৌন্দর্যের মধ্যে অসাধারণ একটা পার্সোনালিটি ছিল।
It is very interesting how she performed, not only with that kind of investment on the face, on the close-up, but through her entire body, that entire presence was important.
ওনার ভিতরে একটা সফিস্টিকেশনও ছিল। সেটা ছিল কিসের থেকে আসে? সেটা শিক্ষা দীক্ষা থেকে আসে। কোন পরিবেশে উনি মানুষ হয়েছেন সেটা, কি পড়াশুনো করেছেন সেটাই, সব কিছু মিশিতভাবে এই জিনিসগুলো আসে। সেই জন্য কোথায় একটু ওনাকে আলাদা করে দেওয়া হয়।
She was extremely fond of literature, and she recognized the importance of literature in filmmaking, in not only her performances but also perhaps in the way she directed films. And this was, I think, what also made her very different from perhaps the other actors of her generation. In fact, when I'm in the street and someone comes to know about the identity of my mother, one of the first comments they make is, oh, she was a thinking actress. Now, she was a thinking actress because perhaps her way of acting reflected a thoughtful individual. And I think she did certain films like Jyotugriho or Chola Chol, in which I think she played, or Bicharok, in which she played roles which called upon fairly deep introspection into who the characters were. It wasn't just a question of performance. So that was, of course, there. But I think the other aspect was because she was extremely well read. She was very, very comfortable and familiar with Bengali literature. I think she drew upon a lot in her performances. I don't think she was ever bothered if anyone said, Chuti, wasn't that film made actually by Tapan Singh? I don't think it bothered her because she was very, very confident of what she had planned to do and what she had achieved. And not once was there any doubt in her mind about how she had contributed to the making of her films in a male-dominated industry. Of course, she was one of perhaps Bengal's first women directors, one of the first women film directors, but she wore that very lightly. Never once did I hear her talking about it, or she always spoke with great respect about Arundhati Devi, about Manju De, about women who had been in films, who had contributed in other ways. And I think she always admired them for their contribution, because each individual's contribution is unique, as she would put it.
I like her pacing, really. And I have not seen in Bangla cinema any moment where a woman is allowed that kind of a cinematic duration, you know, and that kind of, let's say, what in colloquial language you would say footage of a woman who is aroused by the smell of the man, and then she's going around, and then there is music, and then she's just saying one word, "Dakho, dakho, see, see," and you see, and she's repeating the man, remembering the man. I have not seen, you know, it's a very risky scene, because I think she is a younger, she's 17, 18, something like that, or maybe 16, just into first year college. So that, and then to actually able to visualize and put an oral sort of a meaning to that, of desire, of a woman's desire who is dying, you know. This is like to bring two opposites of sexual desire and death together is a quite an achievement.
My mother was very inspired by literature, and whenever she read a story or a novel that she really liked, she immediately thought of it as a film. Now, I'm sure many directors do this, but so the urge to create came from literature, not so much from the sense that I need to make another film. It's, I've read a wonderful book, why don't I think of it as a film? And this again brings me to 3 of her unfinished projects. And Mrigoya was a story by Bonopul, which talks of, in some sense, again, the death of the zamindari system, but of the cracks that were developing even within a particular zamindari family. And it had very interesting characters, and she went into quite a bit into this film. She actually shot certain sequences more as a pilot venture, but which she later thought she could incorporate into the film. But very unfortunately, she couldn't finish the film. This was again a production of Anindo Chitro, which you mentioned. And that therefore takes me to why Anindo Chitro was set up. Again, I think it has bearings, the story has bearings from what you asked me earlier of being in a male-dominated society, because most production houses and most producers of Bengali films were male. And I think what she recognized was that there was often conflict between how they looked at a particular film that she was making, not only as producer and director, but perhaps more importantly as a man versus a woman. And she was uncompromising. So this, I think, sparked off this desire to have her own production house where she would not be answerable to anyone, that she could make her own films and produce them in ways that she wanted to.
উনি যখন অভিনয় করেছেন তখন অভিনেত্রী হিসেবে অসাধারণ। তারপর উনি আবার ডিরেক্ট করতে আরম্ভ করলেন। যখন ডিরেক্ট করলেন সেই ছবিগুলোও কিন্তু খুব সুন্দর ছবি হয়েছে, সেগুলোকেও অসাধারণ ছবিই বলবো। সেই জন্য ওই মানুষটার প্রতি একটা দুর্বলতা থেকেই গেছে। আজও মনে হয় আমার মনের মধ্যে উনি জীবিত রয়েছেন, মৃত নন।